Hey, hello. It is the Go Birds podcast presented by the Bet Parks Casino and Sportsbook app. You love to play, you play to win, you bet Parks. Just a super annoying loss. I mean, like there's obviously I tweeted, I'm sure a bunch of people felt it, the Saquon drop, the Devontae drop, eerily similar, those two games, taking a less than 7-point lead at the end and allowing a team to go down the field and score, stupid mistakes, penalties, CJ getting ejected, like a million different things. And obviously the number one thing, Jalen getting knocked out. And obviously, first and foremost, we hope he's okay. And just the injury count in this game really, obviously, honestly, probably more important than the loss with the Lions winning and all that. But ultimately, and I like Joe Davis and Greg Olsen. You get to hear this, Elliot, but all game, they're like, how can Washington be in this game with 4 turnovers, 5 total? Because Jalen got knocked out. What are we doing here? That sucked. How you doing, buddy?
Yeah, what a weird game, right? I think
all
it's
time.
One of those where
all-time weird.
Like, I'm not sure there's any big picture takeaways that you have from this that you worry
other
about.
Other than injuries and hoping people are okay.
Other than injuries. It. Now, look, I'm not down in the locker room yet. Obviously, the hope is Jalen's okay. I will say, with the concussion and the fact he felt he could go back in, I would personally
I agree. It's not like we're waiting on an MRI for a knee or something.
Now, that being said, maybe he doesn't play next week, right? Because a lot of
it just got a lot less important, Elliot.
It did get a lot less important, agreed, but weird things happen, right? Like, he doesn't play next week, somehow they lose, and then all of a sudden you have to win the Giants game to win the division. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but that's the annoying part about this loss, because I think that there's a lot of things you can take from this game just in terms of they had it won. To your point, man, and we'll talk about Kenny Pickett, but Kenny Pickett put 2 balls right into Saquon and Devontae's hands, and
especially Devontae. I mean, the Saquon one, I agree, should have kept it, but should have caught it. But that was at least a somewhat tough catch, moving his body.
And it wasn't a great throw, but
the Devontae catch felt like Saquon-esque in that, you feel like Devontae Smith catches that ball 99 out of 100 times.
Yeah, and honestly, I think Saquon catches that ball 85 out of 100 times, right? So both high percentage catches. And I think that's the frustrating thing with this loss is you have a backup quarterback in there, you score 33 points. Your defense forces 5 turnovers. I have to think the record of teams that force 5 turnovers in a game is pretty high, right? Jake Elliott makes a huge 50-yard field goal to give you the win. They did enough to win this game. And when you ask, why did they lose it? It feels like it's because of dumb self-inflicted errors. Even the touchdown they gave up where Darius Slay was late to get off the field. Look, the guy was open. They were going to be in the red zone. But 2 missed tackles within the 5-yard line that this team has not really been missing over the last 2 months or 10 games, whatever you want to say. I thought the tackling overall wasn't great today. Jaden Daniels made them miss some tackles. And you got to give Washington some credit. Washington does score points. They do have a good offense. But to put up the 33 points and force 5 turnovers, you should win that game. Flat out. They should have won that game. So the big picture implication, obviously, is at this point, the 1 seed is basically gone, right? Detroit would have to lose both their games. Doesn't look like that's going to happen. Doesn't look like the Chicago pick was a good one for our parlay, by the way. Didn't seem like that one worked out. But to, now, I mean, truly, you got to hope Jalen plays next week. If he doesn't, you have to hope. I thought Kenny Pickett actually played okay. He wasn't perfect or anything.
Other than that one interception that was a
the one interception was brutal, definitely brutal. Now, it's his first time playing real football all season, so you have to.
He gets no reps during the week with these guys, all that.
Exactly. And it looked like, he was just completely fooled by the defense. I thought he made some big plays on 3rd down. I think if Kenny Pickett plays that game next week, they probably beat the Cowboys. And, who knows? If Kenny Pickett plays that game at home in the playoffs against Washington, I think they probably win that game. So, I'll rewatch it, obviously. I thought some throws were not good. He had AJ late where he really could have had a first down there. To your point about Saquon, if he throws a better pass, that's probably a touchdown. Just because Saquon was going, he had to turn around for it. But the Devontae drop at the end is huge. You could argue maybe it's not a great throw, but it's absolutely a throw Devontae should catch. Both, he has both hands right on the ball. He might score a touchdown, honestly, and the game's over. And that's the crazy thing about this Eagles team. They now have 3 losses, and 2 of them are because of drop passes from 2 of their top,
Totally.
what, like 6 players, 5,
Yeah.
wherever you want to put Devontae, obviously
Superstars.
Saquon.
2
Yeah.
superstars.
Well, that's the thing too. When your backup quarterback actually is, playing pretty good and putting up points, like it sucks that the superstars are the ones that let them down. Now, the other thing is, and I didn't think it was a good call, but to pick the flag up on that Kenny Pickett hit, like I didn't think it was a good call. But the fact that they threw it and then talked and picked it up, like that's a little frustrating too, I think, or I would guess at least for the Eagles. So
Especially with all the CJ stuff and all the
yeah.
personal foul stuff they'd
Now,
already
did
had
they
in the
show
game.
what CJ did for the second
So
one?
the
Because I didn't
second
see
one,
it.
I didn't see it either. The first one was like,
The first one, it
I
looks
mean,
like he said something, then someone
he
pushed
said
him.
something, but like, man, it was a very weirdly officiated game.
Right.
Look, they didn't lose because of the refs. They lost first and foremost because Jalen Hurts got hurt. If Jalen gets hurt, they win this football game. I feel.
I agree. 100%.
And
I agree with you.
and again, Kenny wasn't the reason they lost it per se. Which sounds like counterintuitive, but Devontae catches that, they win. And look, the defense, while they forced some turnovers, they did allow Washington to walk down the field. There were so many stupid penalties throughout the course of the game. The one on the Sidney Brown, even at the end, jumping off sides on that kick. Like,
Yeah, that's a weird thing about special teams. Like, they make the big kicks at the end, they make the 50-yarder, but they had a bad start to the game. They have that penalty there. Now, I don't know how much 5 yards ends up mattering, but it's just like sloppiness. And
it all
matters,
I
thought the team was uncharacteristically sloppy for points of the game. Like, how many times this year have we talked about a substitution issue? But Darius Slay's running off the field on that play where there was a touchdown. I also just thought more guys were open in the secondary than we're used to seeing. Obviously, I think CJ being in the game would have helped. But for what it's worth, CJ was on the field where there was a miscommunication with Cooper DeJean and someone was wide open as well. I'm not sure. CJ has been awesome in coverage this year. Like, he's definitely been a net positive. But for sure, losing him matters. But regardless, I just thought the defense gave up so many more big plays than normal. It was just an uncharacteristic performance from the defense. That being said, they still forced 5 turnovers. Like, the offense, you have to win a game where you get 5 turnovers. I don't have it in front of me, but I'd be curious to see how many times they scored off of those 5 turnovers. Like, if you get 5 turnovers from the other team and you only score 33 points, and by the way, 7 of them were with Jalen, and you could argue the second one. It was a nice throw for sure by Kenny. But they were at like the 7-yard line or whatever when he went in. So yeah, I just it's a fluky loss. That's the only way I can kind of put it. Like, it is not a loss where I leave and I go, man, this is a big picture concern for the playoffs, or man, maybe the defensive line isn't good as we thought. I thought a lot of the defensive linemen did have good games. Like, I thought Nolan Smith early on was all over him. Josh Sweat made a big play. They had that big 4th down stop. Like, I didn't think that
Zach Bond was great again. Zach Bond was great. I mean,
dude, the way this team, for the 5 turnovers, the way this team goes after the ball is truly, like, shout out to the coaching staff. Like, I don't know if it always translates as well on TV, but watching up from the press box, like, they go after that football on every single group tackle. Like, they are all punching at it, and that's how 5 turnovers happen. So yeah, it's just a frustrating loss, man. That's the only really way to put it. Like, I think for a lot of these games this year, we've left it and had big picture. Like, okay, so this today is exactly why they could win the Super Bowl. Or after some of the losses early on, and granted, it's been a while. And you could spin it as a positive they lost if you really wanted to go half full. Like, the streak ends, they get the loss
those
out
calls
of the way.
at WIP
exactly,
this week. Yeah,
exactly. So maybe it's not the end of the world, but yeah, I'm not down to the locker room. I'll be curious to see what Jalen has to say, because the Jalen thing was weird. The Jalen thing, he gets hit. I thought it was a late hit. I'm a little surprised they didn't throw the flag, but he gets hit, he gets up, he walks to the sideline. At the first, it looks like he wants to stay in the game. The refs make him leave the game. Then he goes to the tent. He tries to go back in. The refs make him leave again. So, I'm optimistic because of that hopefully his concussion is not that bad. Sucks for him personally too. I mean, it's Christmas week, but as long as Jalen plays next week and they win next week, I think you just look at this as a fluky game where they probably should have won it. They made enough self-inflicted wounds where I don't think you can sit here and say, like, Washington outplayed them or outclassed them, or I'm worried about playing Washington in the playoffs. I don't think it's any of that. It's just a weird game that they probably should have won, but they made enough mistakes that they didn't.
Yeah, look, if he doesn't get hurt, they're up 14-0 with Jalen. Like, I mean, they it's a whole different day, I'm sure.
Well, it also sorry, not to
No, all good. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, sorry, not to. But like, it also shows like how critical the turnover thing is. Like
Of
they when
course.
they turn over
Yeah.
one time today, right? It was one turnover
Hmm.
they had on the offensive side of the ball,
The Kenny
and it
Pickett
cost them seven
disastrous
points,
throw.
and
Yep.
they lose by 3 points. So I know there was that almost one where Kenny like throws it, and it probably. I don't know. It probably should. I don't think it was a fumble. I think it was ruled correctly, but also a pretty reckless play by Kenny to even attempt that pass. Like Jalen doesn't really do that kind of stuff. So, we talked so much on this pod about how much the offense needs Jalen, right? And how like he is part of the reason they win and how he's not just along for the ride. And again, Kenny played pretty well today. But I think today was, if you're someone that's been
Totally.
pointing out the highlight,
Totally.
that if you've been someone that's been pointing out how important Jalen is, today was a good example of that. The turnovers were huge. Saquon didn't run it as well after Jalen left the game. And part of that is because they didn't, A, have to worry about the passing game as much, but B, they didn't have to worry about Kenny Pickett running it. And Kenny is a decent runner, but he certainly doesn't get the type of respect that Jalen does. So it's funny how sometimes after losses, players' MVP cases almost seem stronger when they're not out there. And clearly, Jalen or Saquon are not going to win MVP. But today did show the value of Jalen and really kind of maybe put to rest this idea he's along for the ride, because they win this game if Jalen's in there. It's probably not even close, but they definitely win it, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
They should have won it with Kenny.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. They had it won if Javonte catches the ball, and that's what I was going to say is that I came into this thinking, hey, I don't really have a ton to say. Like, the most important thing today is, are the people who got hurt healthy long term? And look, the loss sucks, but Detroit handled the Bears. Minnesota is winning right now, but who knows what happens? But it's unlikely that the Eagles were going to be the 1 seed anyway. This takes a little pressure off there. Like, they can really try and gear themselves up for the playoffs and know what's coming. Like they obviously have to clinch a division and get the 2 seed, which they are in prime position to still do. Like, again, outside of the injuries, I'm annoyed more than anything, because it's like they should have won that game because of Jalen. They should have won that game with Kenny. There are like a million things where I'm like, this is so. And I tweeted it like in the fourth quarter. I was like, this is gonna be the most annoying loss. Like, and so it's just it's like I just don't think there's too much to say outside of, you hope everyone's healthy. And look, I thought they were aggressive. I mean, with Kenny in there, they were throwing in spots I didn't think they would. They should have converted the Devontae one. The AJ throw on whatever it was second, the play before, was a shock. And throw the ball to AJ, whether it's a penalty or a catch, it seems like that's a pretty good strategy. But yeah, I like, it just feels like, lame they lost, but also,
Well, that's what's funny about this team is, so they have 3 losses now, and I think you could argue they haven't been like legitimately beat one time. Like today, they lost with Kenny Pickett.
Tampa, you can say it, but they were missing guys, and it was
missing a bunch of guys. And then the Atlanta game, it was right there in their hands, like that. And they don't have AJ in that game. So look, none of that matters. They're not going to give the 1 seed by who has the most legitimate losses. But yeah, I mean, it was a weird game. I also thought that we talk a lot about Nick Sirianni's decision making. I thought he made some gutsy decisions in this game. The fourth and two that he went with Kenny on his side of the field. I thought it was a really good play by Kenny Pickett to extend the play. I'd have to go back and rewatch it. To me, it felt like the offensive line wasn't great today in pass protection. I don't know if that was Kenny holding onto the ball too long, if the plays were off sync, but it felt like Kenny had to move a lot today. He certainly is not as good at avoiding pressure as Jalen is. There were a few times where you could tell he didn't even feel the pressure coming, and he wasn't able to turn as many scramble plays into first downs as Jalen normally is. I mean, the other part of this is, if Jalen's on the field for that 3rd and 15, he probably gets the first down. No shot at Kenny or anything, but Kenny's 4 or 5 yards short. Jalen's a quicker runner. He's better at the end of runs.
No question.
There's just so many plays in here where if Jalen's in the game, they clearly win it. But what sucks is, at the end of the day, we could go through all this. The Saquon drop, they didn't have it one versus Tampa today. They're probably going to Detroit now for the championship game. It'd be pretty. I mean, you never know. Detroit could lose that first game. Maybe you still end up posting it.
Especially if Green Bay goes there. I could see Green Bay beating them there.
Yeah.
Minnesota. Look, it's not a lock. It's just frustrating because this team, I think, when healthy, is, as we've talked about, what happened today changes my opinion. They're the best team in the NFL and certainly the best team in the NFC. It doesn't change it at all. So it's frustrating because they're going to, if Jalen's healthy, probably go 14-3 or 13-4 if they don't try. And they deserve better. you know?
Well, especially in most years, if you play like this, you're
Totally.
probably, I mean, they're going to end up winning. What do they have, 12 now? They'll probably end up winning 14 games and they won't even really have to
And
play
they
the
should
final.
have won this one, you know?
Yep. Yeah. But like, man, we keep circling back on it, but that Devontae drop, like so many times he catches that
It's
pass.
exactly
and it's right
like
on.
the Saquon
And
one.
also,
It's the same thing, except like a lesser, in that spot you should throw. Like it wasn't a shock that like you can't argue the play call as much as the Saquon one.
yeah, he's wide
But
open.
it's a
Right.
spot. It's a spot where a superstar athlete who's getting paid at close to the top or at the top of their position, who absolutely should make that play. It's
And I
tough.
think you could.
And
you
the
could
game's
really.
oh wait, hold on. And the other part is it's not just like, oh, you probably win if they make it. Like the game is over in
Right,
each spot
like
if they make
Dunzo.
it. Yeah,
Yes.
done.
Well, the other thing too is if you could pick any player on the team in that spot,
It's
I think
Devontae.
I
Oh
think
my
it's
God.
Devontae. Like
He'd be
AJ
one of my
obviously
top
is
players in the
phenomenal.
league that I would pick.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's just brutal. I mean, it's not a game again where I don't have any big picture concerns. Like it's as simple as Devontae dropped it and they lost. But I think what it also does before we kind of wrap up here is like it puts into perspective how impressive it is to win 10 games in a row. Like to not have any of these things happen, to be as healthy as they have, to win all these close games. Like this loss was coming, whether it was going to be, this is why we talked to Drew from
Well, we had
Westchester
the
about
Drew
it. And he
stat.
brought
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
Like no team's ever won the Super Bowl winning, I think it's more than 10 or 11 games in a row. The Eagles would have been probably at 17 if they would have won today, assuming they win the next 2 games, since they would have definitely needed them. You probably still don't get the 1 seed, and then you have to win 4 in the playoffs. So, I mean, I guess if there would be any one big picture takeaway from
Silver
me,
lining
actually,
type of thing.
no, it would probably just be that it just puts into perspective like how quickly how slim the line can be sometimes between winning and losing. Like we both agree this team is, if not the best in the NFL, they're definitely in the top 3, and they're certainly in the top 2 in the NFC, no question about it. But like dumb things happen sometimes. Like, Saquon drops a pass, Devontae drops a pass, Jalen takes a hit that didn't even look that bad, to be honest, and he's concussed. And then all of a sudden things change. So me and you talk about how this year would be a disappointment if they don't win the Super Bowl, and I still absolutely feel that way. Like they have a great team. I thought the defense even today showed signs of why you can win a Super Bowl with them. But man, it's just dumb luck sometimes. And
the margin
today,
for error is so thin. It's like the game of
yeah.
inches thing. I mean, it feels that way. It's like a game of inches sometimes, or
Yeah.
a game of a hit this way or a hit that way or whatever.
Yeah, and so come playoff time, like if Jalen's in there, maybe the margin for error is a little bit wider because they're up more and there's no turnovers and they're at home and those type of things. But they're a great team. I still leave this game feeling that way, and it just has to be frustrating for them and then for the fans too. Like I'm sure fans are not happy with this loss. They should be mad at Devontae, but Devontae's been a great player, and dumb plays happen and drops happen. It's like Saquon. Because 2 of their best players made plays they make 90 out of.
Totally.
So, yeah, look, it's cold, it's ugly here, but I don't really leave this feeling any differently about their Super Bowl hopes or anything like that. Because I also don't think they needed the 1 seed. I think they needed the 1 seed, but I think they can go to Detroit and beat the Lions. Although the Lions played well today, obviously to watch it, but the Lions putting up the points they did today.
I think the Bears are just bad too, though.
Yeah, but it's the cold. It's the first game with the injuries. Like I thought they wouldn't play as well today. Like Dan Campbell got him out there and played well.
That's the guy. All right. Listen, check out the Daily Pod for updates on injuries, at least what we know of. Elliot's going to go down to the press conferences and the locker room and all that. But either way, I don't know when we'll have pods this week, but we'll have pods this week. But happy holidays. I'm sure it won't be before Christmas, so unless it has to be for some reason. But everyone have a happy holiday. We love you. We couldn't do this without the community. It's the best part of it. And to Elliot's point, like don't let this one linger too much. Let's be on to Dallas.
Yeah.
Dallas week at home. It'll be fun. All right. Check out the Daily Pod again for updates. We'll be back later in the week.